Hi guys! So this video is on Sun in the 11th house. Sorry it took me so long to finish up this series. I just forgot about it. I apologize. But today I want to talk about Sun in the 11th house. So this is for any sign. It's just the house placement. And what the Sun represents in the natal chart is the ego, the career, and sometimes it's considered part of the soul. So it can be considered like over the trajectory of an entire life. You can see how the Sun played out as how someone's soul jumped into this life incarnation and wanted to move forward with it. So it's kind of like the hall that somebody walks down. It really is a good description of the profession over the course of an entire lifetime. So sometimes when somebody's younger, you really can't see fully how their Sun is going to play out. And in Western astrology, just like Western culture, the Sun is considered way more significant and important than it is in like Eastern culture. So Vedic astrology, for example, the Sun isn't actually that significant. It's just that egos are more blown up in Western culture. So of course the Sun representing the ego is going to be a more significant part of astrology here. But really it's just a good description of career. And the more you look at your whole chart as a whole, the more you see that you're probably more representative of your rising sign, your moon sign, etc. So to know what house your Sun is in, you do have to know your time of birth. And this goes for if you're looking at Vedic astrology or Western. I am learning Vedic now. I find it to be way more accurate using sidereal rather than tropical, which is what we use in Western. But it doesn't matter. This is just for general Sun in the 11th house. It doesn't matter what house system you're using or what type of astrologer you're using. It doesn't matter, but this is just a general description. Now, the 11th house represents organizations, friends, networks, humanitarianism. It represents your hopes and wishes, and it represents gains in life. It's considered a lucky house, but that's not always necessarily true depending on what planet is in it. So the Sun being a planet is kind of like, this is how I've heard it described. The Sun is like an actor. So the sign that your Sun is in is like the character that the actor is playing. And the house that your Sun is in is like the setting of the play or the movie. So with that being said, the Sun's placement in a house is where you want to shine in life and where you take pride. So it's a little bit juxtaposed in the 11th house, and this is why I just drew like a rudimentary zodiac, I guess like a natal chart, but there's no planets or anything. But you can see the first house starts here. So the Sun's natural placement, its dignity is in the 5th house, which is the house of Leo, and the Sun rules Leo. So the 11th house up here is opposite the 5th house. This is the natural house of Aquarius. So Aquarius is the opposite of the Sun, or Leo, which is ruled by the Sun. So when your Sun is in the 11th house, it's not actually very comfortable here. It's sort of an accidental detriment for the Sun to be here because it is the natural house of Aquarius, and in traditional astrology, that is ruled by Saturn. In Western modern astrology, it's ruled by Uranus. But either way, the Sun is not comfortable here. The Sun is comfortable in the opposite house, the 5th house of Leo. Leo is a natural place for the Sun to be because Leo is very openly narcissistic. The Sun, the ego, can shine here. It has no hindrances to being what it is. It wants to be the center, it's the center of the solar system. It wants to be the shining star. And when you think about stars themselves, which are all suns, they're not close to one another. You don't see stars in the sky because they're close. They're far apart, right? They're very individual, and the ego is very individualistic. The ego is the mind, and the mind wants us to be individualistic. It does not want us to be part of a collective. The 11th house is collective. right? It's organizations, it's humanitarianism, it's charitable work. This is the house that we look at, and this is where we want to take the hierarchy that was created in the 10th house of Capricorn, where the top is the rulers and the bottom is the marginalized people in society, right? This is like a traditional structure. The 11th house of Aquarius wants to take that and completely flatten it so that people at the top aren't getting the highest distribution of resources and people at the bottom are now having equal opportunities as the people at the top. That is what the essence of Aquarius is. It's taking structures that keep certain people at the top and certain people at the bottom and just destroying it and causing chaos to these structures, to these pre-existing organizations that were created in the 10th house. So when the sun comes here, it's not a great place for the sun to be in, because the sun is where you want to burn the brightest. You want to be the shining star, but there's this need to shrink back from anyone being the shining star in the 11th house. The sun can't do the things that the sun naturally wants to do. Now, that being said, when someone has sun in the 11th house, they are naturally very popular right from the start. These are people who attract friends, acquaintances. Their networks blow up, especially if they get involved in like charitable organizations. So I know someone that has sun in the 11th house, and she got involved in pet rescue after she had a dog, and then she just started to rescue dogs, and she just accumulated thousands of followers on all of her social media just because she got involved in doing charitable work with animals. And there's plenty of people that will go out there and they will do this kind of thing and they will not develop a network. But if you have sun in the 11th house, networks and friends and acquaintances especially are where you shine. I know somebody else with this placement who has just literally been popular since he was little. Like, people just love him and flock to him. He doesn't have to do anything. And he'll keep the same friends. He has the same friends for life. So these are people that naturally just have friends. But because the sun represents like the king and the 11th house represents the collective, the feel of this is like the king that goes down into the masses and is like, I am one of you. So of course, people are going to flock to that energy because everyone loves a shining celebrity who's like, I am one of the common people. But you always know they're never actually one of the common people. And this is inside kind of how they feel. They're like, I am the shining star. Because the sun is where you want to shine. So these people aren't necessarily, they're doing charitable stuff because yes, of course they have the drive to do it, but there's a huge level of ego here that the rest of the people looking at them don't see. They don't see the ego involved in why this person is doing this, whatever cause they're into. And it's the same with Aquarius, which Aquariuses will never want you to know, that there is ego involved with like supporting this cause or, going to like riots, rallies, protesting. There's ego involved here. This is not like a 12th house or a 6th house service and selfless thing. This is not what that is. Now, this is because the sun is in the 11th house. Other planets in the 11th house could very easily be it could be complete humility. So this is just because it is the sun. And this is why it's important to know what planet you're talking about with what house. So the sun here as well will often get gains. So they'll get a lot of money, but it doesn't necessarily come from the career. So they could just have like a benefactor. I know someone with this placement who has been getting large amounts of money from a family member for their entire life. And that has nothing to do with their job, but they've had that source. They just naturally, they don't have to think about it. And So these people might not work in areas where they're getting the money. It's not necessarily high prosperous gains from the career, but they're still getting money in. And they do often, it does seem like they're very lucky, because another person could have Sun in a different house and have to work their butt off for everything. And this person might work hard, depending on what their 10th house looks like and the different aspects that their Sun has. But they're just, the money is separate from that. The money they don't really have to work hard for. Not all of them, but I've seen this happen. And as far as the friendships go, like, they do have this, like I said, it's the king kind of going down into the crowd. They kind of have this aloofness about them inside. Like, they actually feel like a loner, and they need copious amounts of time and space away from their friends. Like, they're a good friend, and it's easy for them to be a friend because they have this sense of, like, nobody should have the center spotlight. I have to give the spotlight to others. We have to acknowledge those that are marginalized. I want to make everyone feel comfortable. It's kind of like that, but they still have this sense of, like, there's a distance. With Aquarius as well, there's an emotional distance, and this is the Sun. So it's like their ego is paramount with the Sun. It's not all what it seems with this placement. Inside is a different story. The other thing about it is that you would think that these people would have an excellent job, an easy, excellent time monetizing their network. They don't always have an easy time monetizing their network, because even if they have developed a huge following on Instagram or Facebook or Twitter or whatever, they don't necessarily want to take that and make it, which is like, you would think they would just want to make a business out of that. It's an easy jump if you have that mindset. Like, if I have a network, of course I want to use that network to gain, to make money. It seems like it would be natural for someone who has a business mindset and who has, like, a focus on a cause, but it's hard for them sometimes to do this because they don't want to lose the trust of their network. They don't want to come across as being at the top of the pyramid. That would look really bad for them. So it can be difficult for them to actually monetize their network. So they can have large networks, they can be very popular. That's not necessarily where they're going to get their money from, and it's not necessarily what their career is going to be in. Because this is the natural house of Aquarius, regardless of the sign that this Sun is in, they can be very good with network, other types of network, like computer network. So they could have jobs involving computer networking. I know someone with this placement who actually installs the networks for business, like their fiber optic networks. So something like that, anything that's cutting edge is going to be an interest to these people, because this is the futuristic house, right? Aquarius is the future. So they can kind of be odd and eccentric as well, but they'll just always be popular. People will either look to the side or they'll think that that's kind of just cute and quirky about them. But inside, they have a very subversive nature. And what I mean by subversive is they're constantly thinking about things getting too structured, things getting too traditional, too set. So even though this is a fixed placement for the sign where they're very reliable, they don't waver too much. It's just a very, very reliable Sun placement. The thing is that because it's this placement of, like, take down the man, dismantle the power systems, that's the subversiveness that I'm talking about. They just kind of want to throw a wrench in a lot of things, and they can get very argumentative, and they can think that their opinions are king. Like, well, everyone has opinions, but mine are the right ones. And so that these are the things that can foil them when it comes to career, unfortunately. And that's what the Sun is about. The Sun is about career. But they are naturally very good at just anything having to do with humanitarianism, any charitable causes as well. It doesn't have to be humans. It can be animals, like I said. And just naturally very popular. And I think that's all I had to say about this placement. Yes, it is. So if you guys have any questions or comments, please leave them below. Please give this a thumbs up if you liked it. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the little bell so you get a notification when I have new videos out. And if you're interested in a private reading, I do those. Just click the link to my website below. Click on the astrology link and go to my book a reading page. Thanks, guys. Bye.